Okay, so we are now on the second part of chapter 4, which is all about proteins and, of course, amino acids. Okay, so if the building blocks for carbohydrates is monosaccharides, the building blocks for proteins is amino acids. So, building blocks refer to the components, no, to the smallest components uh, that build no, a particular macronutrient. So, yeah, for proteins, it's amino acids. Okay, so we will not only discuss proteins in general, but also its component amino acids. Okay, so these are examples of the amino acids. Of course, you have discussed this in your general biochemistry, and I bet you did a lot of memorization. No, I don't know if the teacher made you memorize all the structures of the amino acids, but actually, the minimum requirement no, for every general biochemistry class is to at least memorize the nine essential amino acids and be able to discriminate them from the non-essential ones. Okay, so I really expect you know, to have memorized no, those amino acids. Okay, uh, I really don't mind if wala ninyo na memorize ang ang structures because dili man ni siya unsa ni heavy nga biochemistry good. So yeah, kato lang. And I hope if wala ninyo na memorize, if nalimtan ninyo, then this is the time again to have those memorized. Okay. uh So what are proteins? They are large molecules. That's why they are called as macronutrients, and they are made up of chains of amino acids. They are found in every cell in the body, and they are involved in most of the body's function and life processes. So the sequence of amino acids is determined by the DNA. So how are the proteins made in the body? Um, every structure of the protein no, is dependent on the sequence. Okay? Kumbaga, maunang pinaka-smallest level of their structure and the order no of which the amino acids are arranged in a sequence of a protein is actually determined by the genes, okay, or by the DNA. So that's why ang ultimate function ni DNA nato no, is to actually encode and create proteins. So that speaks volumes no on how important proteins are in the biology of human being. Okay, so yeah, proteins are ubiquitous in the body. That means they are found everywhere. They are needed by the body in all the bodily processes. So yeah, that's why proteins are very important. And in order for us to not develop protein deficiency, we have to what's this secure some of the amino acids from our diet so that our body would continue functioning. Without like a continuous supply of those amino acids, you would develop a lot of diseases no that is brought about by those deficiencies of amino acids. So that's why nutrition is very important in order to maintain no, the amount of proteins needed for continual growth and development as well as continuous body functioning. Okay, so the structure of the proteins, so of course they are made of chains of amino acids and classified by number of amino acids in a chain. So peptides are those chains of amino acids that have fewer than 50 amino acids. So dipeptides, di means duha. So this chain has only two amino acids, and this is the smallest form of peptide. Tripeptides are those that contain 3 amino acids, and polypeptides are those that contain more than 10 amino acids but not long enough to be considered as protein. So, pila di ay nga amino acids dapat para ma-declare ang isang amino acid chain as a protein? Dapat at least 51. Okay? At least 51. Okay, more than 50 man daw dapat. Okay? So actually there is a protein that igo ra gyud 51 ang iyahang amino acid residues, and that is insulin, and insulin is one of the smallest proteins out there, but regardless of its size, it's very important, and I have discussed its importance last topic no on carbohydrates. Okay, so, but most proteins do contain hundreds of amino acids. Okay, the largest of them contains thousands of amino acids linked together by bonds called peptide bonds. So, if ang glycosidic band sa carbohydrate, ang sa protein nato is peptide bonds. Okay, so these peptide bonds join amino acids together to form these proteins. So amino acids are composed of CHON, C carbon, H hydrogen, O oxygen, and N nitrogen. That's why in meal planning you would frequently see what's CHO-CHON fat. CHO is carbohydrates, CHON is proteins, and fat is fat. Okay? So mao na siya kumbagang shortcut or short term for those macronutrients. So, if you look at the structural differences between the three, yeah, kani pa lang ato ang na-discuss, di ba? So, ang proteins, murara po na siya carbohydrates nga made up of building blocks, but kani amino acids and peptide bonds uh, ang tawag sa bond, no? And then fats are composed of fatty acids. So, fatty acids are the building blocks of fats. An example of a fat is, I've told you, triglyceride. Dili lang na siya fatty acids but na siya glycerol, no? Okay, so later I'll discuss to you all about fats, no? Okay, so this is the anatomy of an amino acid. Uh, the amino acid structure, the general amino acid structure looks like this. It always has an amine group and an acid group. Okay, this acid group is also called as the carboxylic acid group and the amino group or the amine group. So the amine group contains the nitrogen atom. And always yun na siya, naa na siya hydrogen as the third component in the third side of the amino acid. So upat man na ka sides, di ba? Na ay side sa amino group, na side sa acid group, and then na ay side sa hydrogen atom. And then there is a side which is called the side chain, which is the one that differs from one amino acid to another. Okay, so that means these amino acids only vary in their side chain. Okay, so to illustrate that, let's take these three as an example. No, so for example, phenylalanine. This is the amino group, this is the acid group, this is the hydrogen group, and the side chain is, naa siya ka ng benzene ring, no? So naa siya cyclic structure. Ang aspartic acid, same ra gyud sila nga na ay amino, na ay acid, na ay H sa side chain or sa kaning color nga yellow ra sila nag-differ. So aspartic acid na siya ikaduha nga acid group. That's why it's called aspartic acid or aspartate in short. Glycine, same ra gyud gihapon nga na amino, acid, and H, pero ang side chain niya is simply another hydrogen. So glycine is said to be the simplest amino acid when it comes to the structure. Okay? So pila ka amino acids ang naa sa ato? 22 tanan, but only 9 are essential again. Okay? So peptide bonds link amino acids. So the way or the process of creating peptide bonds and breaking down peptide bonds, the term no is the same. with that of the carbohydrates, condensation and hydrolysis. So through the process of condensation, a peptide bond is created. And through the process of hydrolysis, the peptide bond is broken down. Okay? So same ra gihapon nga na ay water output kung condensation, but if you want to destroy or disintegrate a dipeptide, for example, you would have to have a water output. No, you have to inject a water molecule in this point. Okay, so that you would be able to separate the two component uh, amino acids. Okay, so same ra gyapon atong sa carbohydrates, pero ang kalahian ra ani is peptide bond na ang atong ginahisgutan. So, what are these essential amino acids again? They must be consumed in the diet. That's why they are called dietary essential. And why must they be consumed in the diet? Because our body cannot synthesize them, cannot make them. So, we have to source them out from another source, which is, our diet. Okay? So, maunang kinahanglan no nga ang atong tan-awon sa protein dapat kay if complete ang yang set of essential amino acids, because that's the time when we can say that that protein is of higher quality. Okay, so diri na sad magsulod no ang quantity versus quality. So diri ang important pud isang quality. So unsaon nato pag determine kung high quality ang protein, kung complete ang iyang essential amino acids. If for example na ay kulang, then di na siya maayo, di na siya quality nga protein. Low quality protein na siya. Okay? Or low biologic value or LBV. Non-essential are those that can be synthesized in the body. So uh it really doesn't matter if they are present in our diet or not, because after all they are they can be synthesized inside the body. So yeah, again, we only have to look at the essential amino acids in our foods. Okay, there are also amino acids that are only conditionally essential. That means depende sa condition. Okay? Mahimo ra silang essential depende sa condition. Okay? An example of that is arginine. Why is it why is arginine called conditionally essential amino acid? Because it's only infants who need arginine, because infants do not have the capacity to produce arginine yet in sufficient amounts. So that's why essential pang arginine during infancy. But when infants grow older, then gakataas po na atong capacity to produce arginine until such time that we can fully meet our needs for arginine. Okay? Um, yeah. So kita nga mga adults na, arginine is no longer essential for us because naanatay enzymatic machineries to create arginine in sufficient amounts. Okay? So, these are the mighty 20. Actually, 22 na siya kay na ay other two amino acids, but they are much rarer. So, that's the reason maybe why they are not included here. Okay, but anyways, again, 9 lang essential. We have histidine, isoleucine, leucine, lysine, methionine, phenylalanine, threonine, tryptophan, and valine. So, dapat kani ang memorize so ninyo, no? Yeah, okay. There are also conditionally essential amino acids aside from arginine. We have cysteine, glycine, proline, and tyrosine, and glutamine sad. Okay, especially when the patient is wounded or when the patient suffers from great injuries, glutamine becomes conditionally essential. Okay. Now we have the four levels of structure. We have the primary, secondary structure, tertiary, and quaternary structure. Uh, any alteration in the structure or sequencing changes the shape and function of the protein. Yes. Okay. Um, the primary structure is the sequence of the amino acids itself. Secondary structure involves the alpha helix and beta pleated sheets. Tertiary structure involves structures like disulfide bonds. Okay. And quaternary structure is not present in all proteins because this is only present in those very large proteins like hemoglobin nga naanay mga subunits. Uh, they are so big that their molecule is divided by several subunits. So kato lang sila ang naay quaternary structure. The process of denaturation, you have repeatedly discussed this in your basic foods, di ba? And even your biochem lab, di ba? I think you have performed an exercise no on biochem regarding protein denaturation. So what is denaturation? It's the alteration of the protein shape and thus functions through the use of heat, acids, bases, salts, and mechanical agitation. So this is when we physically alter no a certain protein and actually destroy no up to the secondary structure, but denaturation does not destroy the primary structure. So that's why ang shape lang ang shape lang sa protein no as well as iyang function pod ang na-alter, pero ang basic primary sequence, ang basic primary structure wala na alter. Okay, primary structure is unchanged by denaturing. So, an example of denaturation through the use of heat is, of course, when we cook our foods, when we cook our meat, diba? From uh, from reddish to brownish na, diba? And unsa pa? Ang ato ang egg, diba? Ang ato ang egg albumin or the egg white changes its appearance from uh, translucent to opaque. 'Di ba? Mas mo siyang creamy, no? Dili na siya translucent or dili na siya transparent tungod sa, protein denaturation. Okay? Kanang buhok sad, 'di ba? Buhok is made of keratin. Keratin is a protein. So, magpa-reband ka, 'di ba? Kulot, tapos after rebanding, mo straighten siya. Actually, ang ginahimo nimo ana is keratin denaturation, okay? Due to the heat, okay? And other chemicals that are used during rebanding. Acids, kanang kinilaw, 'di ba? Gahi nga isda, pero kung kauno na nato after subjecting it to immersion to acid, mahimo siyang humok-humok gamay, 'di ba? Okay? Mechanical agitation, example is egg foaming, 'di ba? Through the action of, imuhang beat ang egg. So, ang egg white mahimo siyang foam, 'di ba? It's a big physical change and that is due to denaturation caused by mechanical agitation. Okay? So, those are just few of the examples of protein denaturation as observed in common food preparation procedures. If you look at the microscopic level of the protein, no, the undenaturated protein or the original protein structure looks like this. It's highly coiled, but due to denaturing agents, nahimo na siyang inani, na uncoil siya. Okay? So that's why muhumok ang karni, no? After nimo siya lutuon, kay inani sad ang mahitabo. And imagine kani ang level of coiling sa protein sa raw nga meat, so maglisod og access ang enzymes nato ani. Maglisod sila og breakdown ani. Okay? kay highly coiled. But after nimo lutuon ang karne, mainani na ang dagway sa iyang protein. So, mas dali siya ma-digest, kay mas accessible na ang surfaces to enzymatic attack. So, therefore, aside from food safety and aside from making it more palatable, the reason why we have to cook our meat and eggs and other protein foods is to make them more digestible. Okay? So this is the overview of, of that section of the PowerPoint. So just read this, okay? Okay, so uh okay. So let's proceed to digestion, absorption and utilization of proteins in the body. So magisgot pud ta ani, but proteins na ang ato ang POV or point of view. Okay. So, in the mouth, do you think there is chemical digestion of proteins? Do you think there's an enzyme there that can act upon proteins? None. Okay, there is no enzyme in the mouth that does that. But of course, na ay mechanical digestion diha given man na because you have your teeth. Okay, and then you know that a bolus is created after you swallow a food, di ba? And it goes down to the stomach, and it's actually in the stomach that the first series of enzymatic breakdown of proteins occur. Okay, so diri siya magsugod. And you know that the the one that is responsible for that is pepsin. But the zymogen form of pepsin is pepsinogen. So you have to activate that zymogen to the active form. And how will you do that? You need the acidity of the stomach. So you need the hydrochloric acid. So hydrochloric acid activates pepsinogen to the active pepsin. And pepsin is now the enzyme that can act upon proteins. By the way, the general term to call for enzymes that can degrade proteins are proteases. So we can say that pepsin is the first protease here. Okay. The products of protein digestion catalyzed by proteases is polypeptides. So gagmay na nga chains of peptides. Mga 10 to 50. Okay? So from large protein molecules na mo siyang polypeptide, mo siyang smaller pieces. Okay? Pag-abot sa small intestines, of course, you know that small intestines completes the job of digestion. And but it needs the help of pancreatic enzymes. So pancreatic as enzymes like trypsin, chymotrypsin, uh, are involved also in protein digestion. Trypsin uh, attacks polypeptide chains and protein chains at lysine and arginine residues. So kung aha dito ang lysine, aha dito ang arginine sa chain, dito siya mo attack. Okay? Thereby cleaving proteins and polypeptide chains into even smaller chains. Okay? Resulting to tripeptides, dipeptides, and single amino acid sometimes. Okay? Yeah, so mao to ang function ni trypsin. Si chymotrypsin, they cleave proteins at aromatic amino acid residues. Okay? So again, si chymotrypsin and trypsin, magikan na siya sa pancreas. Okay? Naapod elastin which, cleaves aliphatic amino acids. collagenase, which acts upon collagen, a protein that is found in animal meats and bones and connective tissues. And yeah, hangtod nga makaproduce of dipeptides and tripeptides. And in the small intestines mismo na ay mga cells diha nga ga-produce og peptidases. And these peptidases break down peptides into single amino acids. Like for example, there are tripeptidases that act upon tripeptides to um, to produce single amino acids. And there are also dipeptidases that cleave dipeptides to free single amino acids. Okay? The preferred form of absorption no for proteins is single amino acids or free amino acids. Okay? Although in a few cases no pwede ma-absorb ang mga small peptides like dipeptides and tripeptides, but mostly dapat makaproduce tag single amino acids, okay, para ma-absorb sila. Okay, so that's the process of digestion, guys. From kanang a piece of meat, then to the single amino acids, diba? So that's how capable our digestive system is. Okay, and it's not an easy job. Okay, so maunang yeah, that's incredible. That's how incredible, our digestive system is. Okay, so after they are now in the single amino acids form, they can then be absorbed across the walls of the small intestines, from the lumen of the small intestines to the bloodstream, actually to the portal vein that once again ito that connects the small intestines to the liver. Okay? So, the same ra gyapon siya sa monosaccharides nga after absorption, padulong siya sa portal vein then to the liver. So, ang amino acid same ra gyapon from the small intestines then to the portal vein and to the liver. And in the liver, the fates of amino acids depends on the body's needs. If the body wants to synthesize new proteins, then these amino acids are gathered together to form new proteins. If the body wants them for as a source of energy, then they are converted to energy or they are converted to glucose and then energy dion. Especially if there's a need to um, to maintain the blood glucose levels, some amino acids are converted to glucose. But if the amino acids are excessive, what if ang imong diet is very excessive sa meat or very excessive sa mga protein foods? Do you think it is safe to have an excess intake of protein? Of course, too much of a good thing is not good anymore. It also applies to proteins. So dili gyapon pwede, guys, because any excess amino acids is rapidly converted to fats. Diba? Just like your sugar. Kung manubra ang sugar, mubiyan siya sa glycogen nga storage capacity, insigida, i-convert sa fat. Same ra gyapon ang amino acids. Ang excess amino acids, i-convert sa fats. Okay? Or pwede nga i-release lang sila simply from the liver to the bloodstream para gamiton sa ubang organs. Okay? In a few times no, proteins are absorbed intact but very rare lang no. Okay? So that's why, guys, you have your glutathione. Glutathione is actually a tripeptide. So it contains 3 amino acids. And if you take glutathione per orem or orally, do you think ma-absorb siya? Like, daghan ang ma-absorb nga as intact glutathione? No, because natay mga tripeptidases that can break glutathione down. And if na-break down sila, they are no longer functional. Okay? So that's why mas bet no if i-take ang glutathione intravenously or through injections. Okay? That is if na prescription ni dermatologist. Okay. Yeah, liver metabolizes amino acids depending on bodily needs, is what I've said. Most amino acids are sent into the blood to be picked up and used by the cells. Amino acid pool is limited but has many uses. Okay? Uh, Protein turnover is the continual degradation and synthesizing of protein. Yeah, mauning fates amino acids guys after sila makaabot sa liver. So pwede nga gamiton sila for the synthesis of new proteins. Okay? Pwede nga i-break down ang amino acids and convert them to glucose. Okay? Or pwede nga kato i-break down yapon sila then ipadulong sila sa Krebs cycle and then oxidative phosphorylation sa ETC to form ATP. Or kung sobra-sobra ang amino acid pool, then they are definitely converted to fats. Okay? So how do we actually convert amino acids to either glucose or energy? Amino acids must be deaminated first. Okay? So it's done through the process of deamination. So deamination is a process of removing the nitrogen atom. That's it. I-remove lang tong amino group nga part. And ang mabilin, mao nang ginatawag nga carbon skeleton. And that carbon skeleton is now used to make glucose. Or katong nga carbon skeleton is shuttled into the Krebs cycle in order to form ATP. Okay? Yeah, okay. So, morning carbon containing remnants or carbon skeleton. So, the process of gluconeogenesis is conversion of those amino acid derived carbon skeletons to glucose and pwede sila gamiton to convert fats if sobra-sobra. Kanus mahitabo ang gluconeogenesis kung kulang ang calorie intake or kulang ang carbohydrate intake. Okay? Mostly kung kulang ang energy intake. So kung kulang ang energy intake, definitely gamiton uh, ang amino acids to form glucose or to form energy. So that's why guys, you have to make sure nga okay imuhang caloric intake para dili magamit ang glucose. So one way to do that guys is to also ensure your carbohydrate intake nga sakto ra. Okay? Kay ngano man, again, dili mas spare imong body protein. Okay, dili na mo insert tong atong discussion about sa uh, protein sparing effect of carbohydrates. If only okay lang yun ang carbohydrate intake, then ma-ensure na to nga dili ma-breakdown ang amino acids to convert at to form glucose. Okay? So, yeah. Inana siya, no? And, okay. The process of producing proteins follows the three components na of the central dogma of life, okay, which starts from replication and then i-translate dayon ang DNA sequence into an RNA code or an RNA transcript, and that is the process of transcription. And then this messenger RNA, this transcript, is then used as the template, no, for the production of uh, proteins, okay, in the process of translation. Okay, so this is how the body produces proteins, and it's dependent with what is coded or what is encoded in our DNA. So, yeah, kana siya ha. So, definitely mao gyud nang buhaton sa body no if kulang og energy or kulang og carbohydrates, ma-convert gyud ang amino acids to glucose, which would prevent the protein from performing its more important function. Later atong i-discuss kato mga more important functions niya. Okay? So, yeah. Kani siya nga piece of information kay magamit kaayo ninyo ni sa pag-answer sa inyong case study. Okay? Sige. So, yeah, speaking of the functions, so these are the functions of proteins. Mauning mga more important functions sa proteins. So, we have provide structural and mechanical support, maintain body tissues, functions as enzymes and hormones, helps maintain acid-base balance, transport nutrients, assist the immune system, and serves as a source of energy when necessary. So that's why this is an optional, this is a less prioritized function because you already have your carbohydrates and fats for energy. So dili na dapat gamiton ang proteins for energy. Okay? So, examples of proteins that do this role is keratin, okay, as a structural part of our skin and our ligaments and our integuments, okay, the nail, hair, and skin. Kanang flesh na to, kanang muscles na to, okay, they are made up of proteins. Okay? Enzymes and hormones, even the digestive enzymes, guys, katong mga digestive enzymes nga so far na discuss nako, they are proteins in nature. So, in order to process your dietary protein, you need another protein called enzyme, 'di ba? So that's why how can you um how can you digest if kulang imong protein? Okay? Hormones like insulin. Okay, dagan pag examples of hormones that are proteins in nature. Fluid balance, albumin. Okay, albumin ensures nga uh, ensures ang balance sa especially sa extracellular fluid. Okay? Acid-base balance also because many proteins act as buffer. So whenever there is disturbances in the body pH, then these protein buffers would help no in normalizing the body pH as part of the effort to keep homeostasis. Transport, like dagan kay mga transport proteins. First is hemoglobin, which transports oxygen throughout the body. We also have retinol binding protein, which transports retinol, a vitamer of vitamin A. We also have ferritin, which uh, transferrin, which transports iron. Ferritin is the storage form of iron. Okay. And there are other proteins as well that shuttle these substances. Antibodies and the immune response, mao ni siya ang very important function of protein. In order to support healthy immunity, dapat sakto imong protein status. Okay? So that means if protein deficient ka, if na kay protein energy malnutrition, then your immune function would be compromised. Okay? So, a quick review, proteins play many important roles in the body, including helping facilitate muscular contraction, promoting satiety, and appetite control. Okay. Okay. So, how much protein do you need? Healthy, non-pregnant adults should consume enough to replace what is used every day. So the goal is actually nitrogen balance. So pregnant women, people recovering from surgery or injury, and growing children should consume enough to build new tissues. Okay? So what is nitrogen balance, guys? That's protein intake equal to nitrogen output. Okay? So dili pwede nga daghan kayo imuhang na-excrete nga nitrogen, mas daghan pa sa imuhang gikaon, no? So diya na mahitabo ang mga imbalances. So dapat protein na dapat nitrogen balance ta, so kani protein intake is equivalent to nitrogen excretion. Um, in case if taas atong protein intake, no, compared sa nitrogen excretion, then that's positive nitrogen balance, and this is not really a bad thing because this is necessary, especially for pregnant women nga naabayay mga fetal formation nga mahitabo diha, for the formation of fetal tissues sa womb. So, kinahanglan nga positive nitrogen balance. Also, for growing children and adolescents who need more proteins than adults, no? Because they are still growing in that stage. Okay? And also some athletes, especially that they need to be bulky, no? Especially for weightlifters. So, they need to eat a lot of proteins than what they are being excreted. So, mao nang mga examples of positive nitrogen balance. The really bad thing here is the negative nitrogen balance. This happens when nitrogen excretion far exceeds that of the protein intake. And this happens when an individual who is experiencing a medical trauma or not eating a healthy diet, okay? Especially sa mga hospitalized patients, guys, kani manggod sila kay catabolic stage sila. Catabolic ilang mode of metabolism. That means they are constantly breaking down nutrient stores including muscles. So, mawala ang proteins. So, dili na na maayo, no, kay ma-compromise ang function nila sa lawas. So, maupod na nga mas prone sila to further infection kana mga hospitalized patients. So, our goal in the hospital is actually to make sure that our patient is not losing weight, because if the patient is losing weight, that means the patient is also losing a lot of proteins from muscles. Okay? So, what can we do to, as a clinical dietitian, to ameliorate that? We need to make sure nga makuha sa patient ang full protein needs sa patient. Okay? And it's a challenge for us. It's not as easy as what it might sound, because dili na siya basta-basta pakauno na rin nimo ang pasyente, and feel kaha nimo nga mahurot kaha na niya, labi na nga ang kani sila kay gaka-experience og inflammation. So wa na sila gana magkaon, anorexic na sila. So dili man na pwede nga piliton gyud nimo kaon ang patient, di ba? So you must do a lot of dietary strategies to make sure nga makuha niya ang iyahang protein needs para mahimo siyang nitrogen balance. So mao pud na atong ultimate goal as a clinical dietitian, to make the patient attain the nitrogen balance status. Okay? So of course we will discuss the strategies, no, on meeting the dietary needs of patients in the hospitals in the nutrition therapy nga subject. And this is what I told you about ganina, that not all protein is created equal. So there are protein sources that are of higher quality. And actually na-mention na nako ni sa chapter 1 na itong discussion, di ba? The proteins that are considered of higher quality are those that are digestible, that contains all the 9 essential amino acids, and that provides sufficient protein to synthesize non-essential amino acids. So, kani siya guys, amino acid score, limiting protein, PDCAAS, and biological value of protein are measures of protein quality. So, if a particular protein food has higher amino acid score, then of course mas taas iyang quality. So, the higher the amino acid score, the more complete no the essential amino acids in that protein. If a protein has limiting amino acid, then ang tawag is limiting protein. Limiting amino acid is kulang siya sa kanang amino acid. And usually katong mga dili kayo quality nga proteins kay mga limiting proteins. PDKAS and biological value proteins would also correspond to the quality of protein, such that higher PDKAS and higher biological value of protein, the higher the quality of the protein. So, okay. So, another term is complete proteins and incomplete proteins. Complete proteins are those that are high quality proteins or high biologic value protein or HBV proteins because they contain all the nine essential amino acids. And usually, guys, animal sources of proteins are those that are complete proteins. Okay, there is this one lone animal protein that is considered incomplete, and that is gelatin. Remember that gelatin is created no from collagen, from connective tissues, from bone stock. Okay, pero kana siya incomplete na siya nga protein. So that is the only animal-based protein that is considered incomplete. The rest are complete proteins. What about incomplete proteins? Kani sila kay naay mga limiting amino acids. So, majority of the plant sources are incomplete. Kana mga protein sa vegetables, incomplete na sila guys. Kana mga protein nga naa sa atong rice exchanges, incomplete na siya. Or gabilong na sila sa low biologic value proteins. But there are exceptions because there are two plant sources that are complete. Your soy and quinoa. Okay? So that's why not all protein is created equal. So what are your protein needs? You can easily compute that by, multiplying the AMDR for protein by your TR. So if, for example, imong energy requirement or imong TR is 2,000, so i-multiply lang na ninyo by 0.15 because 15% of the calories must be coming from proteins. And i-divide na yun na siya sa 4 para ma-derive ninyo kung pila ka proteins ang need. Another way to compute is kaning actual body weight method. 0.8 to 1 actually no ang kinahanglan, 0.8 grams to 1 grams per kilogram daily, such that if you weigh around 50 kilograms, so you just have to multiply it by 1. Okay, 0.8 to 1 grams per kilogram man ang need nga proteins. So if you weigh around 50, then you're gonna need 50 grams of proteins also. Okay, if 0.8 imong gamiton, then 0.8 times 50. Okay? So, kani siya nga piece of information, needed ni siya sa pag-answer sa case study. For competitive athletes, they might need more proteins usually. Okay? So, we'll discuss more of this sa sports nutrition. Okay? So, at this point, I'm gonna stop the recording. Okay? Para na atay part 1 and part 2.